Hey y'all, it's good to be here with you again. Glad to be here. I was out walking today in the woods. I spend a lot of time doing that. It kind of called that way, led that way, um, to wander about in the wilderness for a season. But while I was out there today, so there was some things that just kind of welled up inside me about dealing with a broken heart, and the subject of dealing with a broken heart has been on my heart all day long, ever since this morning. I had some little bit of revelation this morning about being brokenhearted and what that's like and how that works and all that. And while I was walking today, a lot more came to me. So much, in fact, that I felt strongly impressed to come back home and not only speak to you about it, but when I'm finished speaking, type it out and post both. That way, and why I don't know, but I just listen. I feel led to post both. I do. But so this will come out not only in the form of this video, but also in a written text form, so that people can, well, if maybe they need to just look at a paragraph of it and really, focus their attention on that. It'll be there when I'm finished, so that they can do that if they want to. But considering the nature of a broken heart, okay, we can look at life itself and we can see where it's the nature of everything in the world to break down. Breaking down is just a part of life. If things didn't break down, how could anything be made fresh or new? They need to break down to become soft and pliable, sort of like clay in the potter's hands, so that the potter can shape them into a vessel that is fitting for the use in the next moment. And consider that a minute. How we as vessels are used by life. I hate to use that word "use," but for lack of a better word, I use it. But instituted by life to perform or do something for a moment. And then when that moment is gone, the form that was used is no longer useful, so it will be broken down and recycled into something else for the next moment, and that's just the nature of life. There's always this breaking down of things and coming back together of things, right? But the thing is, the clay has to be soft and pliable, versatile, flexible, adaptable. And unless it's like that, unless it's soft, it's of little use in the potter's hands to create and form and shape, right? Okay, so realizing that the heart itself is subjected to being broken for that very reason, so it can be made new again, fresh again. Heartbreak is part of the cycle of life. And when we look at life, we have to remember life is all of life. Life is just like love. The love of God is impartial. It shines on everything. Life is like that too. It's whole. It's all of it or none of it, right? But God has a way of taking what's there and he turns mourning into joy, right? but it's the mourning he works with. It's the grief he works with. So there are times of great pain and great grief that we will encounter, but those times of great pain and grief hold within themselves the very potential to produce a greater joy. Thus, we can remember what Jesus said. He said that he endured the cross for the joy that was set before him. He got this. He's seen that time of pain and grief and sorrow was all mud for the lotus. It was clay in the potter's hands to be transformed into something wonderful, you know? So, the heartbreak has its place, right? Now, if we're experiencing heartbreak, it's there to reform us. Think of that word reform. To reform us. To reform us. And this reformation, this reformation, it's part of the process of life to transform us. All living things are subject to change. Impermanence is working continually. It goes on 24/7. And it's the nature of what is alive to go through these processes of transformation. Now, the ego seeks conformity, right? Yet life isn't about conformity. God, life itself is all about transformation, not rigidity. It's more about softness, right? Yeah. And when we look at that, transformation is about life, but conformity, it leads to death, right? Conformity is about the concretization of form. Transformation is about the dissolving of form, right? Conformity is about concretizing it. Transformation is about dissolving it. And that includes all form. Forms that we hold dear, that we've attached ourselves to, need to be transformed. It's part of. Otherwise, they're dead. They're dead. They're dead. When you try to cling and concretize and encapsulate and keep things from changing, you kill them. All the relationships you have with everything, including yourself, need to be subject to transformation to stay alive, right? So this includes people we love, that we cherish, our dear ones, our loved ones. So it's wise not to attach ourselves to what form they are in, right? They're always there, but what form they're in, you know, that changes. That changes. You ever hear the saying that they're in rare form, you know? Yeah, well, that maybe normally they're nice, but now they're angry, Or maybe once they were healthy, but now they're sick. Once they were alive, and now they've gone back to the dust, right? But they are them throughout the whole thing. It's just the forms that are changing. You're not going to lose them, but you will lose the form. You're destined to lose that form. And it's that form that you cling to, that you cherish, that's hard to release and let go, right? So if we attach ourselves to that form, we're destined to suffer loss, because the form will certainly change. This is where mindfulness comes in. We have to practice the mindfulness of the observation of the impermanent nature of things. And as we're watching everything change, we're not shocked by it when it does, right? We're not shocked by it when it does, because we're always watching this change occur. But when we get set in our ways, that's when we suffer. So this reformation or this reformation is all about coming back to life. It isn't about taking away life. It's about reviving it, you know? because all living things are subject to this reformation. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. What the dust is, the dust of what is, the dust of what is what is there for life to work with. The space it takes up is what space is there for life to work with, right? For life to occur, to manifest, for growth to happen, this dust in the space has to be transformed. The form must change. It's going to be the same old dust. It's going to be the same. And as far as the spirit goes, it'll be the same old spirit, you know, but it'll be made new, right? It's always being made new. The same old thing always being made new. So to make space for the next manifestation, the dust has to be transformed, right? But it's the same stuff. It's stuff that life works with. There's nothing, as Solomon said, there's really nothing new under the sun. It's the same old stuff taking on new forms, right? So let's just take a minute now and consider together the suffering that occurs when the heart breaks, right? When that breakdown happens. Why do we suffer? We suffer because what is destined to transform has become hard, right? Soft limbs bend in the wind, hard ones break. The soft heart doesn't break in adversity. Yeah, hard ones do. Hard ones do. Now that may sound really harsh to someone that's going through a heartbreak right now, you know, to be called hard-hearted. But don't take it personally. We all are. We all go through this. You're not. It's nothing that's unique or makes you special. The hardness of the heart is something we've all got to deal with. But if you're experiencing heartbreak right now, take this into consideration. If your heart was soft, it wouldn't be breaking. It's breaking because there's a hardness there. Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay for the moment. Now's the moment just to sit with that, to sense that, to sense that hardness, that defensiveness, that contractedness, that resistance that keeps it from just being connected, flowing with everything that's around, right? That sounds harsh to tell somebody that's going through a heartbreak, but it's exactly what they need to see, because when they're soft, they're able to bear that adversity without the heart becoming so heavy with grief. If the heart were not hard, there'd be nothing there to break. Very simple, yet harsh to the ears of those that suffer, that are suffering from a hard heart. Thus, everything that is simple is not simply accepted. It's not always easily accepted. And this is such a circumstance that which is simple as the heart that is breaking being hard is not something that's necessarily easy to accept and see. So how does this happen? How does the heart become hardened? You know? How does the heart become hardened? We can think about sentimentality here. We can look at that a little bit, you know. We think that the ego kind of makes us think that sentimentality entails a softness with it, but it really doesn't. It brings a hardness with it. it fosters a hardness of heart. We're going to look at that because when we become sentimental, we become attached to a farm, right? Yeah, attached to a farm. There's things that we become attached to that are sentimental. Farms. And that's all they are. Farms. And when we become attached to these farms, we have expectations of what should be and shouldn't be, right? And then we become hard in our judgments regarding the dispersal of justice and equity by life. And we become hard in our notions and our beliefs that cease to be living beliefs. And become rather these beliefs that are written on these stone tablets. These laws for being that we impose on life, on being. Those very laws that we impose are hard on us. They're hard on us when they're broken. And you can be certain that they will be broken because of the impermanence of life. Oh, stop writing these laws. Stop the legislation for this being that this must be this way, that must be that way. They must say this, they must believe this, they must think that, I must feel this. Let all that go. Let it all go. Let it all change. Because when you make those things into laws for being, when they're broken, they're really rough on you. They're hard on you. Because whether you resist it or not, the impermanence is gonna be at work. It's gonna be at work. Whether you breathe it in or not, the air is there. It's up to you as to whether you breathe or not. It's not up to the air, right? So you will encounter impermanence, and that impermanence can come to you as adversity, or you can see it in the big picture for something that's deeper than that. You can go beyond the visualization of adversity that's on the surface that you get at first glance. When you look deeply, you can see what the impermanence is leading to. And it's not what's here now, right? It's not what's here now. It's not what's here now. If we become hard, if we resist that impermanence, the change becomes very painful, very intense. Yet it's not so hard if we don't resist it, right? When we are soft, the change is soft. When we are hard, the change is hard. It's the stubborn suffer their own stubbornness. Not something we want to hear if we're in the middle of a heartbreak, that there's a stubbornness there. I can look at myself and say, I wouldn't want to hear that, but there it is. There it is. There's a stubbornness there at a level that's resisting the change, that's seeing only the adversity on the surface. So it's essential, if we're going to navigate our way through the times of heartbreak, that we abandon or surrender ourselves to what is, simply to what's here, to what's here. All of it, without resisting it. The way out of the grief, the way out of the heartache, is through, the only way out that I'm aware of is absolute surrender. Absolute surrender. Absolute surrender. We have to surrender all of our notions and beliefs of what should or shouldn't be, what should have happened or shouldn't have happened. We got to get rid of that. The acceptance that becomes our salvation comes to us via that pathway of surrender, of abandonment, of our own beliefs and notions, of our own will, that comes and arises from those beliefs and notions, right? Yeah. So we have to give up our notions that people or places should be something other than what they are. And we have to be able to be willing to be present with what's here. If we're going to overcome our heartbreak, we need to abandon all of our notions and beliefs of entitlement, okay? We have to abandon the notion that somehow we've been given something that we don't deserve, or that we've been robbed of something that we do deserve. Because those notions and beliefs of entitlement become calloused walls around our heart. They become the very things that keep us from getting what we really want, which is love, which is peace, which is joy. So it helps if we can understand that what we're entitled to isn't anything in particular, but rather it's transformation. Transformation. It's the transformation that's part of our inheritance, right? We inherit transformation just as you would inherit the characteristics of your father's features. We inherit transformation from life itself. We're not entitled to life on our own terms. We are entitled to be subject to that transformation, even though we might insist on confirmation. Because in the end, life will win. Love will win. It always does. Love will make sure that you get exactly what you deserve. It will. It will. And yet we can observe a peculiar thing at play here. We can see that if we keep resisting what is, rather than letting it break us, it will make us more hard, more fragile, more weak, more hateful, more bitter, more condescending, more sarcastic, until we become so sick and tired of ourselves that we just give up the insanity of insisting that the universe revolve around our expectations and laws of being. Right? Yeah. Yeah, so this nature of adversity, this nature of pain is like the rain. The nature of the rain is the same, yet it produces flowers in the gardens and thorns and thistles in the hedges, right? The same rain. The nature of adversity, the nature of pain is the same, yet it makes the broken ground softer and the fallow ground harder, right? But there's hope for that fallow ground. There's a limit. There's a limit to how hard you get before you. The hardness has its limits. The softness is more of a limitless thing, but hardness has its limits. And something to think about sometimes. Anyway, when we try to force conformity rather than become subject to the impermanence, what we find is we become rather weary. It takes from us our strength. The seriousness of life at that point becomes this weight, which makes our hearts heavy, and we become filled with grief, when we attach ourselves to beliefs and notions of what should and shouldn't be, what we do is we find that it starts this obsessive cycle of thinking and rationalization. And we replay these scenarios of what should and shouldn't be, over and over and over in our thoughts and thinking. Somehow thinking that our thinking, rethinking it over and over will change it. And it's insanity, because no matter how much we think about it, it doesn't change it, but we keep thinking about it. And each replay of the scene adds emotional weight. It makes the whole thing heavier. Faith comes by hearing, it said, and hearing by, but anyway, the faith that comes by hearing something over and over and over again reinforces beliefs and notions, right? So all these replays of the seriousness of these things only make it more intense, and it gains weight in our hearts, and it makes life hard to bear. It makes for a heavy burden and a hard yoke. The cycle of obsessive thinking, actually what it does is it detaches us from the reality of the present moment, where the sun is still shining, where the birds are still singing, and we find ourselves rather caught in the cycle of samsara, the self-made hell on earth, right? Caught in that obsessive cycle of thinking and rationalization that says things are not as they should be, that somehow love is not in control, that somehow life is not working out, because we become short-sighted. We only see what's, we don't see the whole picture. So until we become willing to simply let the matter go, whatever's causing us the heartbreak, and let things be as they are, and be okay with that, we're going to suffer. And sometimes to get past that, it starts with just being okay with our not being okay. We got to get down to the root level, right? And wash away the soil of delusion that fosters and supports those false beliefs about the benevolence and the justice of life at that level. Those false beliefs about the benevolence and justice of life at that root level, at that level that we think that we're being cheated, or that it ain't fair, We got to get down to that level. We got to be okay with not being okay sometimes, just to get there to that deepest part where we can look at that and see it for what's really going on, right? Because see, whatever we don't turn over to life, whatever we don't turn over to God, turns over and over inside of us in that cycle that just perpetuates the pain, right? Yet if we can see the cycle as it's going on, then we have a choice, right? And this is why in times of great loss and great heartbreak, it's imperative to get quiet and to get still and not seek to escape your feelings by running. Running by getting lost in busyness and addictions and stuff like that, right? We're not wanting to avoid this. We're trying to transform it by bringing love to it, right? So in the stillness, in the quietness, without making judgments of right and wrong, dropping those notions of should and shouldn't, we look at things as they are, And seeing them as they are, we're set free. Because we realize truth, don't we? When we see things as they really are. And the truth always liberates us. So seeing the cycle of the recycling going on actually puts the brakes on it. It puts the reins back in our hands, right? Puts the horse reins back in our hands. Because of impermanence, we all experience loss. Yet that suffering that comes doesn't need to be permanent. If we can see what's being produced by what we produce in the soil of it, right? Seeing the cycle, the whirlpools in the river of life, seeing those things going on, we can choose to either give ourselves to the flow of the mainstream or let ourselves be drowned in those whirlpools. We can surrender ourselves, we can surrender others, we can surrender the circumstances and events that surround us to the flow of the mainstream. Not trying to carry the form of those things along with us and resisting this current of impermanence. We find that when we don't resist the flow, that we have all the strength we need to float. We have all the joy we need. We have all the peace we need. We have it all when we're at peace with what is. When we can surrender to the flow, trusting in the benevolence of life to carry us, to place us, to sync us up with life's timing. It doesn't come by effort on our part. It doesn't come by trying to swim against the current. It comes in abandonment and surrender and trust in letting the current of life do the work, letting the impermanence itself make the change that you want to see, right? Because the change is going to occur. Without your input. Can you just let it? Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you just let it? Can you just let things be? What we find is that we don't have to fight to make a living for ourselves. Rather than carrying ourselves on the power of the ego, that self-made man, that pull it up by the bootstraps, the toughen up guy, the buckle down. It ain't like that. No, we don't care. What we do, we find that rather than go that route, which is the hard way, we go the softer way through the strength that the joy gives us, the joy that comes from the surrendering of the power of our strength. We find the strength that we find ourselves being able to operate from this joy, the strength that this joy brings with it. And that joy comes from surrendering our own power, right? Our own strength, our hearts, and all of our minds over to life itself, over to God itself. When we surrender all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, contention with what is ceases as we surrender our hearts and minds and powers to the life. We have none of our own to contend with life with, right? And having none to contend with, we find that we cannot be contended with. The war is over in our submission and glorious and noble surrender. And the surrender is something that's noble. It's not a matter of being ignoble. It's a matter of nobleness. A surrender that brings with it a nobleness that gives us an upright stature, that sets our feet on solid ground. And now, no longer in contention with life, we can just let it live us. Whether that entails laughing or crying, hunger or fullness, warmth or cold, it's all the same. It's all embraced. Whatever the moment brings to us is the bread of life, to be feasted upon with a cheerful heart. And then all of a sudden, all these farms just become food for our joy. Food for our joy. And that's what it's all here for. To nourish the joy that you are. So it's all good for you. The sweet and glazed honey fruits and the bitter greens of life alike. Every circumstance, every thing you find yourself in, everything that's breaking your heart, it's all there for you, for you. It's no accident. And the intentions that it's brought to you with are good, Surrender your notions and beliefs that there's anything but good going on with it all for you. See what happens. Namaste.